stop overthinking it. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, this is what I find, especially working with beginners in business, especially because like we're trained from school to, you've got to get the answers right. And there is just this idea that it's like, the website has to be perfect, the post has to be perfect, and I can't get started. Like,
hello and welcome to Chaos to Clarity, the podcast that's your compass to navigate the exciting world of service-based businesses. If you're a determined woman in your current business adventure, striving to conquer the chaos and build your empire, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Maggie, your go-to business bestie and chaos navigator. I've spent nearly 2 decades in the service-based industry, building a photography business, a yoga studio, and now a thriving coaching practice. I've cracked the code to consistent income without all the chaos and noise. So get ready to increase your business growth, connect with your ideal clients, and find ease in both business and in life. It's time to turn your frustrations into inspiration and your chaos into clarity. So go ahead and grab your coffee, a pen and paper, and let's dive into the journey of building your dream service-based business together. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, everyone, welcome back to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie. I'm your business bestie and your Chaos to Clarity coach. And today I am talking with Tiffany, who is the Business Bravery specialist. I'm going to let her introduce herself, but we actually met on Instagram. And it's been so much fun getting to know her through Instagram. And so Tiffany, why don't you tell us who you are, what you do, and who you serve?
Yeah, okay. So I am a business and mindset coach. I'm based in Australia, but I work with people all around the world. And yeah, I help coaches do brave things in their business, whether that's getting on camera or just being able to, sell their coaching, or even do like that masterclass or podcast launch, whatever that brave thing is. That's what I'm there to help them with, because sometimes feeling the fear and doing it anyway doesn't produce the results. Sometimes it just produces so much mindset drama that it's just like, oh no, I'll just put that off. Like I did with my podcast launch of my own, where I was thinking about it for 3 years before I finally did it. And then once I did it, it's just like opened up all of these amazing things in my business and met amazing people like yourself and others. And yeah, like it's just like that's what I want to help people do, like just live a more amazing life and, more enriched life by doing these brave things that they might have otherwise put off. So yeah, and I have a podcast about bravery too. So yeah.
Yes, I love that. I love that so much. And I think when you talk about being brave, right, it brings up more powerful good feelings than when you think about, oh, I'm really scared, but I'm going to do this anyway. That kind of leaves that like white knuckle feeling of like, oh my gosh, I'm terrified, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, for me, like, so I have a background kind of with anxiety and things like that. And I really thought my life was going to be more about just managing that anxiety, getting through the day, and just like living a life and pretending to be normal like everyone else, even though my inner world was just in huge turmoil from the minute I woke up to the minute I went to sleep, and if I even got to sleep. So yeah, it's just, and I had the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, and I read it and it just was like, this just didn't click for me, right? I know it works for a lot of people, but for me it didn't click. And then yeah, it was just learning about things like managing the mind and things like epic ideas, like not every thought you have is true. Like, oh my gosh, if I have learned that so much earlier, my life would be so different.
Yeah, yes.
So yeah, and it's just being able to do some of those brave things, like getting on camera when I used to sort of stutter and stammer, getting up in front of people and talking and things like that. Like you wouldn't guess now, I feel quite comfortable on camera, but yeah, just all of these little things, me doing brave things, but also managing my mind in a certain way just really helped me to just live a life that I never dreamed possible, if that sounds so cliched, but you get where I'm coming from.
Yeah,
Right.
but I think there's a certain amount of power in that, right? Like understanding that you can have the life that you want, right? You can live that life that you're dreaming of, and it doesn't have to be a certain way, right? Like you can get there, and it doesn't have to be like just what one person or one strategy is, right? Being able to try on different things. And I think that's where some of the real power comes in, where you get to try different things, right? Like you read the book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, and then it didn't click for you. So you tried something else, So many people will be like, yes, this one thing, it's the way, and they try it and it's maybe not right for them. And then they're like, oh, but I give up. Right. And I'm just going to think about that dream, and I'm never going to get there because this one way didn't work.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, it's just that's the one thing about me. I'm so stubborn. And once I get something in my sights, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep failing until I either make it happen, or at least on my deathbed, I said, hey, I gave it my all, and it was fun giving my all.
Right.
But yeah, like I had this experience actually where I was working for a photographer, a pretty big photographer, landscape photographer. He had millions of followers, and I was working for him doing his social media. And I actually met him in person in Sydney. Like, he's American, all the things, and met him in person. And yeah, I'm helping him with his social media, and I can't say 2 words to him. I was so shy. And then I finally got up the gumption to actually speak to him. And I was like, I said to him, oh, look, I know I'm not saying much. But when I'm, behind the keyboard, I'm all over it. I'm just, a bit more introverted, but that doesn't mean that I can't do great things for you. And then, he's like, oh, Tiff, don't worry, I'm an introvert. And like, that blew my mind. And suddenly opened up my mind to all of these possibilities of like, hang on, actually, I don't have to be a back of house person or the support person or someone that helps someone else. It's like, hey, maybe I can do these other things. And yeah, that was just this huge eye-opening. Like, this guy was on videos, on camera, like millions of followers at that time. And this is back in like 2015, before we even had 2015, before we even really had influencer or something. And
right.
yeah, it was just this eye-opening thing. And yeah, it's just changed everything. It sort of changed the whole trajectory for me, just having that as a possibility. And then it's like, oh, well, let me work out how to make this happen for me. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, because I also used to call myself an introvert, right? Like there was I was the kid in high school, all throughout all throughout school, even in college. I was not one to like raise my hand and like offer myself up to do anything, right? Like, especially like if we were reading out loud in class, it would be like, oh my gosh, I better get this right. I didn't stutter. Like, I didn't have like a stuttering problem. I don't know where it comes from, right? But it was just like one of those things where I was just terrified to like be in the spotlight. And I think when I started teaching yoga, that started to fade, right? Because I had to stand in front of people and I had to speak. It forced me to speak, even though I'd already been photographing weddings for like 5 or 6 years at that point, right? And learning to speak in front of an audience, right? In front of a yoga studio, in front of 10, 20, 30 people, that really allowed me to shift in my photography business to really be able to kind of like command those big crowds, right? And be able to get through family photos quickly and easier, quote unquote, right? Because I've told almost every couple that I photographed, right? Like, your family photos are probably going to be one of the most stressful parts of your day, because someone is probably going to leave that you need here for these photos. So just make sure, here's how you can prepare, right? And it allowed me to prepare my clients better so that they could have a better, smoother wedding day. And like, now as a coach, being able to have a podcast, right? Be getting on lives, just being the face of my business. It's so cool to see like that trajectory of like, I would still consider myself an introvert because I like to have my alone time, right? Like I like to be alone. I like to recharge. And there's a certain amount of people that I can be around if I need to recharge. But like, it's just one of those things where it's like, that's so crazy that 20 years ago in high school, I never would have like thought I would be doing this.
Yeah, likewise. And I guess I want to say for me, like I kind of removed the whole labels of introvert or extrovert. For me, I'm me. And sometimes I can be loud and outgoing, and other times happy to be on my own with a book and don't message me and don't talk to me. And that's just who I am. For me, I kind of just had to remove the label, because like I felt like having either of those labels just sort of meant like I was getting myself stuck, I had to be one way or something, as opposed to just being able to adapt and shift as I needed. So
yeah, and I think that's a really cool mindset shift, right? Like especially if you have kind of taken on any kind of label, right? Whatever that label may be, like how can you really allow yourself to be you, and just to know that yes, today might be one thing and tomorrow might be another, and that's okay. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. I think like it can be really common for all of us. Like I think it's the way the human brain works, right? It wants to sort of quickly categorize people and things and ourselves and everything like that. But I think that freeing ourselves from some of that labeling and organization process,
Yeah,
we can actually be freed up to try out different things and try on different identities for a moment and see if we can be someone else and have these other just amazing life experiences by not maybe putting ourselves in the corner. So
yeah. Yeah, for sure. The thing that came to my mind was Nobody Puts Baby in a Corner from Dirty Dancing. Literally where my mind went.
Like, likewise.
I love that. That's so awesome. So how long have you been in business, and what is something challenging that you have overcome in your business, and kind of how did it affect your business? I know that was a lot of questions all in one.
Yeah. Okay. So I've been in online marketing for over 10 years. And, through that process of working, first as an employee, but then also picking up side gig work and that kind of stuff, and then tried various business ventures in the last, throughout the last 10 years, basically. I thought I was going to do a photography business, and found that I didn't enjoy monetizing my passion on that side of things. So then, my business became more about like what was in my day job, which was the marketing and that kind of stuff. And that's kind of, and then that led into consulting and then coaching and things like that. And I found that my clients, like a lot of people would come to me and like, just give me the marketing strategy. I just need it. The thing is like, I'm not a one size fits all person, and there's 100 different answers to what is going to work for you. And it's helping someone find one of the answers that can work for them and their audience and, their potential clients. So and then I found the people who got the best results were the ones who were able to manage their mind. Like they already had that mindset training, just because it seems to be, it's the 80%, and the actual marketing side of things is kind of the 20%. Because if you've got a coach who's saying, you've got to get on the phone, call people and just cold call, and you're like, okay, but you don't feel it, you're not going to create results, because your subconscious is going to be fighting that whole process and moving that forward. So that's when I found that really fascinating, about how I could give people the same strategies but they wouldn't get the same results. And then that led me into mindset stuff and finding my own mindset stuff. And it was funny with the mindset stuff, I kind of thought, what is it, I'll worry about mindset when I'm making my six figures. But no, to do it way before then. Just like, no dear, you won't get to six figures without that side of things, at least worked out to a certain extent. So
So, oh my gosh. And that's so true. That's right. Like I've talked to so many people who are like, I will worry about mindset. I will worry about XYZ when I get 6 figures. And I'm like, it's probably easier to worry and work through right now than it will be then.
Yes. It's such a crazy notion. It feels like this nice to have. It's like, oh yeah, but it's really is more of an essential and a must have. At least it
Right.
certainly was for me, because when you hear I've been in online marketing for 10 years and everything's like, well, why don't you have your 6 or 7 figures by now? And it's like, well, because my mind spectacularly has definitely held me back, and definitely the work in the subconscious and stuff like that. So yeah. So that was not all of your question. There was
That's
other
okay.
parts of your question, which
Yeah.
is,
So what is something
mm,
challenging that you've
mm,
overcome in your business, and how did it affect your business? And I know you talked a little bit about mindset, but is there
mm,
something else, something bigger or different that comes to mind?
mm. Oh, okay. There have been so many challenges. Oh. So yeah, I guess like, I mean, really, the mindset has been the biggest one. But if we're looking for something else, then something that I deal with is chronic health and chronic pain stuff, flare-ups from time to time. And that has been a big factor in holding myself back because of the idea of scaling equals more work. And I guess for me, untangling the idea that in order for me to make more money, I have to work harder,
Mm,
which, because the thing is like I'm not one of those personality types that has to be told to work hard. I'll work hard, like
sure.
the people, like the people years back when hustle was in, that was all the thing. And I just get so frustrated by it because they'd just be telling me to hustle, and I'm like, I'm doing all the things,
Right.
and yet I wasn't necessarily making the money because I wasn't focusing on the right things. And also, I was so stressed out and anxious about doing all of the things, like that it would take me 3 or 4 times as long to do certain tasks in my business, creating content. Uh, you know, Preparing for a sales call was like a half day event. Those
Yeah.
memes are like, what is it? I have a call at 4 p.m. 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. is preparing for the
Right.
call. 4 p.m. have the call. After that, recover from the call.
Yes. Yes. I
So
feel that.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, like that's not how I run my life now and everything. I actually just can do things in like 5% of the time that it used to take me. And
Yeah.
yeah, and now, I mean, I'm still working on time and that kind of thing. Like I'm considering doing like my next sort of big brave challenge of like trying to get down to 4-hour work days.
Yeah.
But at the
Yeah.
moment, I'm just trying to get back like my Saturday and Sunday. Like I have Saturdays off, but my Sundays work has crept in, like especially with
Mm-hmm.
producing podcast. So trying to
Yep.
get that back is sort of my new thing. So yeah, just like that's the thing that's really changed my business, is just like uncoupling the idea that, because I thought I wasn't good enough, and because of that, that meant I just kept working harder, and yet that can only take you so far. And you will max out on time, especially if you're doing all of these small tasks that you can pay other people to do while you go off and do the things like actually doing sales and things
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely stuff that has taken me, yeah, years to untangle. I spent a bunch of time with a coach to help me untangle that stuff. And I'd show up and I'd just be like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed doing all the things, and she'd just like, it only takes a couple of hours to do this stuff. And I'd just be like, what? No. It can't just be that easy. But then it became that easy just by training the brain and finding the evidence for it, and trying out this like different identity of being someone who doesn't overthink things and doesn't overwork. And yeah,
Yeah. And I think
that's
that's really amazing. And I think that's something a lot of people can
mm,
really take value from, right? Knowing that this thing that you're working on, right? Whether it's content or creating your offer or being brave, whatever it is, right? That thing doesn't have to be overly complicated. And
mm,
I would even argue that most things in business are not super complicated. Most business tasks are not, but our brain turns them into like, well, my mom always used to say, don't make a mountain out of a molehill, right? So like, don't create this big, overwhelming thing for something that could literally take 10 minutes, right?
Mm.
So it doesn't have to take an hour. It could take 10 minutes. And I think there's a lot to be said about kind of dealing with some of that mindset, right? And like navigating those thoughts of like, oh, I'm not good enough. What if this isn't good? What if blah, blah, blah? But what if it is good enough? What if it is just right? So what if that's exactly what someone needs to hear at that exact point in time, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot that can be taken from that, just knowing that if you're feeling overwhelmed
Mm.
about there's so much to do, like, is there stuff that you can have someone else do? Or how can you navigate, like, what happens when you sit down at your computer to create a social media post, right? Does your brain just automatically go a million miles an hour and there you are in the same spot 1 hour later with nothing written, right? Like, what happens? Because I had to do that for myself, right? I used to let content take so long because the root of it was like I was so scared to be seen, right? So it goes back to high school when it was like, okay, you get to read the next paragraph. And I was like, suddenly I don't know how to pronounce any word in the English language anymore.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Oh
Oh
my God.
man. Yeah, yeah. Definitely had all of that stuff with content and writing half a post and just being like, oh, will they like it if I write this? Oh, will they react if I say that? What if I do this? And just yeah, whereas now it's just I write a social media post in under 10 minutes and don't think twice about it and put it out. And yeah. And the same amount of people or even more people react right back. And
Right.
I had a post the other day where I was just sharing about how like I've managed to make meditation work for me after years of just not being able to do that. And yeah, and I was just sharing what I'd been doing, and then all these people were like, oh my God, I'm so inspired, I'm going to do this now. I was like, what? And yet, a couple of years ago in my business, I used to try and write these inspiring posts because I really wanted people to be like, oh my God, I'm going to do that right now. That's so amazing. And I'd, put so much of that kind of work and energy and anything into it. And they just fall flat. Like, no one care. That I
Right.
might get some likes or, oh, interesting
Yeah.
post. But, when people write interesting post and that they're just doing their lead gen, like
Right.
they probably didn't even read it. So yeah, it's just it's definitely different in the approach and also like the energy behind it and everything too. Just yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I love that. So what is one business tip that you would tell someone who is either starting their journey or feels stuck kind of in the chaos of business?
Yeah, what is one business tip? Okay, so like for me, I would definitely say just like stop overthinking it. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. Like this is what I find, especially working with beginners in business, especially because like we're trained from school to, you've got to get the answers right. And there is just this idea that it's like, the website has to be perfect, the post has to be perfect, and I can't get started. Like I was talking to, a client on a call the other day where she was trying to get through this whole, I just have to start posting and like right at the beginning of her coaching business. And yeah, I just want to say like B grade work is more than perfect for online business because there's so many people putting stuff out. It's like it's a matter of putting something out there, testing it out, not overthinking it, because like I mean, yeah, done is better than perfect, imperfect action, all that stuff. But it's just like until you start getting into that groove of putting something out there and just becoming somebody who just doesn't overthink it, just puts it out there and then sees how it goes, and then you can always tweak and improve and get better over time. But unless you actually start doing the work, it's a bit like this story that I heard when I was doing photography and stuff. more. It's like the story about the pottery class. I don't know if you know this one, Maggie, you might. You probably will once I start talking about it, but it's like they had this pottery class and they split them up into two groups. And one group was told, okay, you have to make one pot per day for 90 days. And then, you know, your best work, that's the one we're going to mark. And then the other group was told, okay, you've got 90 days, make one pot, do it however you want, you know, do the plans. And so this is what always helps me, because obviously, like, well, I mean, obviously to me, the group that spent all this time doing the planning and then maybe made 2 or 3 pots in that time, their work was not as good as the group who did one pot per day. By actually, like, you learn by doing. And
Right.
so just do the thing, put it out there, be okay that you are going to be learning and getting better over time, and stop holding yourself back of it has to be perfect so they'll buy from me, because it doesn't. I've done so many imperfect things where people bought from me and spent thousands of dollars. So
Yeah.
that might be 3 or 4 pieces of information, but that's one. I tried to go
Yeah,
for one.
no, for sure. And I think, you know, I think there's so much truth in that, right? Like, so last summer, was it last summer? I don't know. In the last, like, I would say 2 years, as I closed my yoga studio and shifted to like 100% online for coaching, I was actually really scared to show up in front of the camera, right? To have like the camera facing on me was like another level of like, please read to the entire class, right? Like, and I just didn't like doing it. And so I challenged myself to a month of reels, right? Just to show up for 1 month and do 1 reel per day. And just like in that story you just said, right? Like by about the 14th day, I was like, okay, I'm enjoying this. I like, you know, finding the sounds. I like creating these things. I'm feeling more comfortable in front of the camera. And then at the end of that month, then I challenged myself to go on my stories at least once a day for 30 days. So getting myself 60 days of like exposure, right? And now I feel very comfortable being able to talk right to the camera, right? Kind of talking to the abyss of like whoever's out there listening to me, right? But that really helped me conquer that fear, and it proved to me that it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what you look like. And if you call out what you look like, people are probably going to take more notice, right? Nobody knows if you don't have your hair done or if you don't have makeup on or whatever, right? Nobody probably notices that. And that's what I have a lot of clients say to me. Well, I can't go live because like my hair or my makeup or this or that. And I'm like, trust me, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, and I'm not necessarily a person like I don't wear makeup and my hair is always in a bun. So like this is just who I am. So, you know, for me, it's like, well, I would feel weird putting on makeup, right? And being on camera. But for someone else who might not be used to that, like that would be something that I would challenge them to say, I don't know, do it once, see what happens, do it twice, see what happens, you know? And I think, like you said, the more you do something, the more you can exercise that muscle, the easier it's going to feel, the more you're going to learn, and the better it's going to get.
Yeah, definitely. Although like I do put on a little bit of makeup before I get on camera, like just because I have like I get this skin redness. So when I don't wear the makeup, like I feel I mean, I have obviously hit record a couple of times without makeup and it's like been completely okay. But yeah, for me, I just became someone who just put my makeup on every morning. So that way, if I wanted to go live, I could, or if I wanted to do something on camera, I could. But I had a client like doing a challenge launch thing and everything. And she got on the call with me, the sales call, and she's like, I so love your stuff. And I love, you know, you're not wearing makeup and it's amazing. And I'm like, I am wearing makeup, but okay. So, you know, And it is light, like it's not heavy, but yeah,
Right.
it's just, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, no one, like, I guess I don't look for that, right? For me, it's not
Oh
like a
yeah. Oh,
big
it's not a
deal,
deal breaker
right?
for me at all. Yeah.
But I think I find it funny when I come across different like influencers who are like, they'll sit and do their makeup like on social media, and like the way they look after the
Mm.
makeup versus
Yeah.
before, I'm
Yeah.
just like shocked, right? Where I'm like, oh, oh my,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
I've I've tried to film a couple of those at times because they do get a lot of extra views and people get interested in the transformation. But man, it's hard work trying to like put makeup on and carry a
And talk.
conversation and like I don't know. I'm not that girl. Like I would seriously at the end of that I would look like a version of Nailed It and just be like take me to the hospital because the mascara's in my eye or something. It's just,
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so funny. That's too funny. So what is one piece of advice that you would tell your younger self?
yeah, yeah, it's always too, but I think for me, like for my younger self, because I mean, it's kind of hard because honestly, like, I got to where I am by being whoever I was. But if I could have learned something sooner, then it probably would be that not every thought you have is true. Like, just for me, especially with the anxiety and just like oh man, an inner critic on steroids, like
Yeah.
just, like it's so hard to do anything and to like just put yourself out there, even speaking up in meetings, like in my day jobs. Like I didn't do corporate, but I worked at a university, which is just like a whole different beast of its own. But speaking up in a meeting and my voice would crack as I'm trying to talk. And I worked in IT back at those days. So like I'm like the only girl in the room. I'm of course younger than everyone. And yeah. And I'm supposed to be leading these meetings as a project manager. And my voice cracks and I'm like just out of the nerves and things like that. Like I did say before that I like stammered and stuttered and things like that, but wasn't like a proper stutter, but it was just like that was the nerves of how it would show
Sure.
up of just and yeah, just trying to be that person or any of these versions of me with also having this voice of what did you say that for, what did you do that for, like
Yeah.
that's the wrong thing to say. Like even when I started doing the podcast, my podcast, it would come up and just be like, what did you ask that for? Like nobody cares that you asked that question. And that's going on in my head while I'm trying to interview someone. Like it's just not every thought you have is true. And
Yeah.
once you start questioning them, and if you start writing them down and question them and sort of actually look at them and give some evidence for they might not be true, then that voice actually quietens down quite a lot, at least in my experience and for the experience of my clients too. So just yeah, just not every thought you have is true.
Yeah. And I
It's
think, when you can quiet that chaos in your mind, right? When you can kind of quiet that beast and just allow it to like not be as prominent, I think that gives you so much more space and time, like, right? Because I know I've had tons of intruding thoughts and tons of that little voice in the back of my head going, why are you doing this? Is this actually what you want to do? Why did you say that? Why are you posting this? Right? Like all of those things, questioning like every action. And finally, similar to you, right? Like I started journaling about like, here's what I was thinking today, and here's what I did today, and here's why I did these things. Like, I guess it kind of started to become like a justification of like, here's why I'm doing these things. But it also helped to quiet all of those like inner questions of like, well, why would you do that? What do you, are you actually going to follow through with this? Is this actually going to work this time? Right? Like all of those things, like that I know other business owners have thought, but at the time it was like, I must be the only person ever thinking, is this going to work?
Yeah, I mean, like for me, it was a real thing of like, because I could see other people and they would do things and they would have success. And my whole thought process was like, of course, because they're them and I'm me, and I am for whatever reason just somehow less than everyone
Yeah.
else. So I have to work harder, I have to do more, I have to try and be more. And actually that just didn't really result in the results that I wanted or a life that I wanted until I was able to work through a lot of that stuff. And just now I get to show up and I can make a decision and I can do it without having that voice and without having, like this whole that judgmental voice, because it just, yeah, so hard to do things when you have like, I mean, I didn't need to worry me negative comments online all in my head. Like there was nothing mean that anybody out there could have said that was meaner than the voice in my head. So yeah, just being able to shift that and not live like that, and just realize that not everybody else even lives like that, and it's like a whole different world, and it's enjoyable and it's a lot less stressful, and the anxiety is like not even there anymore. It's just, yeah.
Right.
So,
yeah, for sure. And I think more people are probably walking around with that really mean inner critic, and that is why they don't do the things that they want to do. Because I've talked to so many people who have said similar things. Well, I can't do this thing because what if so and so thinks XYZ about me, right?
yeah.
And I'm like, so, like, okay, that's their opinion, and they might think that about you. What if they think that about you right now? You can't change them, but you can love who you are and be confident in yourself, and it doesn't matter what someone else is thinking, right?
Yeah, yeah. I find it can be less about even what other people are saying and more about like not wanting to feel the feeling of shame
Yeah.
when that voice comes up, whether it's from outside or internally. It's, tend to be avoiding that feeling of shame. And so it's often not even an overthinking problem. It's just a I don't want to feel problem. And
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's so
yeah.
crazy. Okay, so my last question is, if you were a kitchen utensil or gadget, what would you be and why?
Man, awesome. I have been preparing for this question forever. So yeah, my answer to this question is funny because I was talking about my husband about this, and he's got a whole different answer for me. So this sort of insight. I hope this is even having you, but when you are like one of those, it's like tightly sealed or whatever, and you're like, and you can't open, comes in, you clip it under, and it just lifts the lid, and all the air comes in, and then suddenly you can just open it. Like it's super easy. I don't know, maybe I should have brought it with me, but yeah, it's like this little plastic gadget, and instead of you trying to twist the lid, it lifts it.
Okay.
So the air comes in underneath and it pops, and then you can just easily twist it off like it's like a knife through butter.
Yeah.
And so like a jar opener, that's kind of me, because it's just like people are stressed out about their thing, and then I get to come in and go, hey, do you know it can just be this easy? And then it's just like, oh, and then that changes everything for the rest of their lives.
Right. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that so much. That is, I mean, everyone always has a very unique reason, but that's the first time a jar opener has been said on the podcast. And I love that. I love that idea though, that you're like coming in to help people to say like, it doesn't have to be this hard to open this jar. It can be this easy.
Yeah. And it's just that whole change perspective shift and everything. So yeah. I don't know if you want to hear what my husband said.
I do.
My answer
I absolutely do.
Oh my God, okay. So this is going to sound strange, but his answer, he said that I'm a whisk. But the reason that I'm a whisk is not because like I aerate or, provide air or help people lift themselves up or anything fancy. It's because in our kitchen drawer, the whisk is the thing that gets stuck. When you try to open the door and then you try to put it back in, it's like whisked out. My husband's a smart ass. So.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's too funny. That's so funny.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to ask Drew. I'm gonna have to ask my husband what he thinks his would be and then what he thinks mine would be, because this is one of my favorite questions to ask people on the podcast is this question. Because it's so off the wall, right? Like every time I ask it, people are like, I have never thought about that. But so I used to use this question in yoga teacher training, and it was an icebreaker. So we would start the very first weekend. This would be one of the first things that I would ask people, right? When we were all sitting in the room, we'd sit down, I'd introduce myself, and I would go into like my kitchen utensil or gadget that I would be in the kitchen is blah, blah, blah. And then I would go around the room and have everyone like introduce themselves like that. I mean, number one, because it's kind of funny, right? Like, because you're like, what? So it kind of like brings down the stress of like, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? Right. And then it gets into this like, oh my gosh, you're this, I would be this too, or, anything like that. So
Yeah. Excuse me, that's awesome as an icebreaker question too. Find those, have introduced yourself at the beginning of those events, like some of the most stressful things. Like, I know who I am and what I do, but I'm so stressed. And that utensil question is definitely interesting. So yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. This has been so fun to interview you. So go ahead and tell everyone, I'm going to link everything below down in the show notes, but make sure to tell everyone where to find you, how to connect with you, and any links that would be great for them to visit.
Yeah, okay. So probably the first one you should visit would be Maggie's episode on my podcast, so that you can actually hear her like interesting stories about bravery and stuff that she shared. So on the Business Bravery Podcast, I forget exactly which number episode it is, but I'm sure Maggie will have that in the links and whatever. So I would suggest that. Where else you can find me would be on Instagram, is where I hang out the most, and that's at Tiffany G Studios. So can find me there, no underscores, no spaces or anything like that. And then you can also find me on Facebook and LinkedIn a little bit and that kind of stuff, at that similar handle, Tiffany G Studios. So yeah.
Awesome. Yay. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I can't wait for everybody to listen to this, and this was so much fun.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Wow, what a great interview. Thank you so much for showing up here on the Chaos to Clarity podcast. Again, my name is Maggie. I'm so excited to connect with you. You can find all of the information, all of the links below in the show notes for today's interview, and I hope you have the best day ever.